Hey everyone, my name's Joe and welcome to part 6 of the Godot top-down shooter tutorial. In this video you're going to learn how to create an enemy, how to handle bullet collisions with that enemy, and then how to handle it when that enemy dies. Let's get started. So if we come into our player scene, we'll notice that pretty much everything here is something that we want on our enemy, right? We still want a sprite, collision shape, still need to know where to fire bullets, still need muzzle flash, etc. So the first thing we want to do to create an enemy is actually copy our player. So I'm going to come into our main scene and I'm going to right click on our player and hit duplicate. You can also use Command D or whatever hotkey it is. And I'm going to call this enemy. Now, our enemy is still referencing our player scene. So in order to change that, I can right click on it, come down and hit make local. And this will basically copy the player scene tree, but make it a unique instance here. And then I can right click on this again and hit save branches scene to actually save off our own enemy scene that currently has the exact same structure as our player. And so now I can move our enemy over here and we'll see, as expected, it still looks identical to the player. So the first thing we'll do is click on our enemy scene and we will change our sprite to use this blue guy down here since he still looks kind of like a combatant. I'll move this over here so that we can change our sprite and save that. And now if I come back to our main scene, we'll see that we've got an enemy, which is great. So if I run this now, we're going to see two issues. One is that the enemy moves with the player. The reason for this is because we never actually changed the script that our enemy scene was looking at. And two is that our bullets don't actually hit our enemy because we haven't built in that handling yet. So those will be the next two things that we tackle. So first we're going to go over to our enemy scene and we're just going to right click and hit detach or clear script. You can also hit this button right here. They both do the same. And we're going to add a new script just called enemy.gd. One quick note is that we're getting a little unruly. I mean, it's not too bad yet, but we're adding everything to our root directory. So I think the next episode is actually going to be refactoring both our code and our directory structure to make that a little bit more nice and hopefully give you some ideas about better ways to structure your Godot project. Okay, so I'm actually going to leave our enemy script we just created for now and come over to our bullet. So right now we don't have any handling for when our bullet enters another body. And we can do that by coming over to the node, and we'll do this through the UI, and we're going to connect the body entered signal. And so I can double click on this, and then we'll just use the default method name. We'll hit that. And now whenever our area is moving, our bullet, and it collides basically with another node, with another body, then we're going to get this method fired off. And one important thing to note is the difference between body entered and area entered. If you have multiple areas that you want to check collision, so like say we had other bullets, since we're using areas for bullets, then you would use area entered, area exited, etc. But because our player and our enemy are kinematic bodies, they're physics bodies, we want to use body entered. And so that's why we connected that signal. And so in here, we're going to actually add our handling for what happens when our bullet hits the player or the enemy. Our actual handling is going to use something called duck typing. And duck typing is a concept in programming that comes from the phrase, if it talks like a duck, if it walks like a duck, if it quacks like a duck, it is a duck. But what it really means when it comes to code is by saying we don't actually have to know the exact type or class that something is. We can just check, does it have functions that class might have. And so what that means is we don't actually have to check our body coming in, whether it is of a player type or an enemy type. We can just check which functions it has. And the nice thing about this is it means we don't have to use inheritance or we don't have to force anything that a bullet should hit to be, some kind of an actor class or a player class or whatever. We can add handling to really anything in our game by doing this. And it means that we can have one kind of common entry point, one common function name that anything that a bullet should interact with can just implement. And so what we're going to do is just say if body.has method, and we'll say handle hit, and then we'll put our handling in here. So again, just to recap, anything that should be hit by a bullet, all they have to do is implement this handle hit method. And then what we'll do here is just call handle hit. So we can say body.handle hit, and we won't get type completion, but we do know it's there since we since we're getting within this if statement. And eventually we can add parameters here. We'll kind of figure out what each body needs, like what information it needs to handle a hit. But yeah, this is nice. So this is what duck typing is, right? We're not checking what type the body is. We're just checking what properties it has, what methods it has. And so this is a little bit more flexible and a little bit nicer than using inheritance or, inheriting from some base actor class or base player class, etc. Now that we have our handling from the bullet side implemented, what we need to do is actually add something to our player into our enemy scripts that we'll use this method, this handle hit. So we'll implement it there and actually add some handling. Real quick, I'm going to get rid of this output tab since it's kind of big, but let's start with our player. So I can come in here and I'm going to add a new function, which will be called handle hit. And right now we don't have it taking any parameters, but we'll just do that. And so what I'm going to do here, just as a temporary measure, we're going to refactor this later, but I'm going to add a health variable. We'll just say var health int equals 100 for now. And what I'll say is just say print player hit, just so we can see what's happening. I'm also going to do health minus equals, let's just do 20 for now. And then we can print out health. Okay. Great, so we're not really doing anything right now. We're decrementing health, but that variable doesn't really do much. But I'm gonna grab this function and come over to our enemy. And pretty similarly, we're gonna just add a variable called health. Pretty much the exact same thing that we had before. And we will just decrement it here and say enemy hit. And so we'll just do this to make sure that we're actually handling collisions correctly and they're being detected right. So we'll run this in just a sec to see how it's looking, but one last thing we want to do now is that once our bullet has hit something, we actually want to queue it free. So we were already doing this with our kill time or timeout. So basically now we have two conditions. It either goes long enough it doesn't hit anything and we just kill it, or it hits something and then we kill our bullet anyway. Eventually, we'll probably add a common method that can be called by both of these to do some other handling, like, an impact sprite or some other things. But for now, this will work. And now I can save this and we can run it. And we'll see that when we shoot our enemy, we're actually getting enemy hit. And obviously the health is going negative, but it looks like it's working. We can attack our enemy and our bullet is getting destroyed. So the last thing we can do, just to kind of give some sort of a game feel to this, is just actually get rid of our enemy once we've lowered its health to 0. So if I come to our enemy scene and open up our script here, now instead of just printing this out, I can do if health, let's do less than or equal to 0, doesn't really matter. Then we can say enemy, or we can just say queue free. And now if I try playing this, we'll see that if I hit our enemy enough times, they'll go away. So this is great, guys. We've made really simple mechanics, but ones that feel good, they look good. I'm still excited about that muzzle flash and how that looks. But this is really good. So thanks so much for sticking with me. I hope you will subscribe if you like this so you can get notified with any of the new stuff that I'll be putting out, and I'll see you in the next video.